Well, here we are again. We meet every Sunday. Spectrum Voices Conversation. A group of people with their autism talking. If you've heard this before, skip forward a minute and you'll be straight into the meeting. If you want to miss the meeting, go 5 minutes forward and then you'll be straight to where Harry talks about our Facebook shares and our Facebook posts and our inspiration. The first minute is an invitation for you to be involved. If you're autistic or if you're in the profession of autism, come speak to us. We make a podcast with you and we put it out there for you. Every Sunday we have an open meeting. Sometimes it's just me explaining what's going on. We've got a few irons in the fire. We made an application to a Colicon to put forward a presentation in a format where there's a panel of people, mixed autistic people and professionals. The title of the presentation was something along the lines of a good example of a seat at the table in action, working. And I'm pleased to say that we have been accepted by a Colicon for the third year running to present there. So those of us who have signed up for that will be out there yet again, having the opportunity to put a slightly different slant on what we do here at Autistic Radio. Harry Morris and myself have just made a recording with Dr. Colette Ryan talking about floor time. It's a relationship-based way of thinking about interacting with an autistic person in some respects, but they also point out that it has a broader concept of a way of thinking about human beings. And even if she's being playful with us, even the pets in the family, it's about relationships. So we'll be making that available as a podcast quite soon. And it does come alongside with other content that we have, which is ABA based. Because we're looking into behaviourism and we're involving behaviourist thinking people, some of whom are autistic themselves, to discuss that with us. Having an alternative way of thinking or an alternative philosophy on it, like floor time being put in the same space, I think is a very important part of what we should be doing here. We ask people to represent what they think authentically, but in a space where other people are thinking slightly different things and rubbing along. A bit like being at a very good conference where you hear things and share things in the corridor just by being there. I had an extremely good experience this morning. I have to report that I've taken part in a late diagnosis program as a punter, and I was absolutely gobsmacked with the quality of what was offered to me. I was really impressed by the person who led. They made something work with absolute empathy for other autistic people. It was a really world-class piece of presentation. I could not think of anything that I would change that would not have lost something else. So I'm leaving the conversation on a high there and a few positives, Harry. Are we ready now to... You need to stop your camera there, Morris. I'm putting you on the stage so you will appear otherwise. Are you ready to talk to us about the Facebook post from this week?
Yes, good evening, Julian. Good evening, everyone. This is Spectrum Voices Conversation here every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States time difference. This is Sunday, the 30th of June, and this is the Facebook sharing part of the broadcast, and something I really enjoy doing almost every week. And what we start off with, the first post is a positive one, and it's from Jordan James, the autistic photographer. And he also has a podcast called the Neurodivergent Experience. But the post itself is about photography. And he's taking pictures of wildlife. I'm unsure where he is, but he's away somewhere and he's taking pictures of wildlife. And he's saying, I've been loving all the wildlife we have seen so far. I believe being autistic improves my abilities to take in the details like birds and butterflies. Yesterday was another great day, but still yet to see a black bear. So there's a lot of pictures been shown, wildlife as described in the post.
This is really good art, isn't it? I like the relationship that some autistic people have because of their abilities, visual abilities, their processing. They use either photography or cinema to make striking, artful images, and this person again and again, I'm impressed by what comes out and what they share with us. I'm in my own life, I have a photographer who has just created a piece of art from some of the subjects when we were travelling, and like Autistic James, the photographer, the autistic photographer, it was about details. What they had done was they took a set of pictures with sun through leaf shapes, tropical leaf shapes, and now we've had those printed kind of like glass prints in large format to be a set of 4 together. And it's something that autistic people seem to do about finding similarities, pattern matching, and seeing everything in the photograph before they take the photograph that gives them that edge. Really happy to see his work there.
I like stuff like this because what we've talked about before is the autistic, the sensitivities, and the negative side of it quite a lot. But then we've also talked about the positive, if it's, sensitivities and sights and sounds. And in terms of photography, obviously it's sights, it's colours, it's details, and stuff like nature. And even being within nature while you're doing it sounds a fantastic thing to do, and very, very fulfilling. And it's good that stuff like this gets shared because there's so many people that like to do this sort of thing. The next post is from Autism NI, and Autism NI is Northern Ireland's main autism charity and supports over 35,000 autistic people. And it's basically feedback from autistic adult that used the service. And what they said is the autistic adult office support officer was helpful, knowledgeable, and understanding. They utilised clear communication, and this is an excellent standard that needs to be benchmarked. Autism NI is doing fantastic work, making positive differences and contributions to people's lives who are living with neurodiverse needs. And there's kind of supporting text with it, as well as the organisation says they appreciate the wonderful feedback that I've just described just there, and they say that this service is flexible in its approach and aims to connect autistic adults to the supports they need, and recognises the strength of working together in order to achieve outcomes.
I think it's really good to see something like that. Sometimes saying when things went right is so much more effective than the many times that we say things went badly wrong. And it's lovely that somebody has taken the time to make that comment. I also have a recent story of some really good, well thought out practice to tell about the late diagnosis program produced by Autism Initiatives in my area, and I'm going to make that subject to a bit of a podcast so that whenever we see things that are really good, let's amplify those to get those copied. Let's make the good examples be known about and use that as the way to influence things for good.
Could you call an worker who finds folks other things, connects to adults the supports they need? Could you call them a networker? Just the word officer sort of hits you when you first see it in a different sort of contextual way. So how the decent context it turns out to be. I think is this someone who the counsellor's sending round the word first hits you, and knows it's a service that to folks to go along to. So thinking of a friendly word, and networking is a thing that's in my recent years experience folks could do with, for finding more of what's out there. And I've got a couple of local projects wishing to help them do that.
I'm with bated breath here, waiting to say how much I agree with you, Morris. I'm almost going to interrupt you then, just to say how much I agree with what you're saying.
Well, that's nice then.
I hope that does feel nice. It is about networking, and your suggestion that they try to use the word networker or network instead of officer is a good way to change their way they think about it. You change the words, you change the way you think, and to make it clear that that is actually what autistic people need. Networking together so we can, to some degree, self-help and some degree self-support and some degree make it easier for ourselves as a group outside the constraints of charity, etc. That's really where we need to be. I know people have been trying this for a long time, but it's still something that's a work in progress.
It's all about language and words in terms of what is said and what is described and what is written down and what you can see. The kind of word officer is it's bland in a way, because it's official, and it can basically mean anything to an extent. And when you think of an officer, you think authority, somebody in charge, and it paints a picture, and it may bring a bit of anxiety. Some people who may be accessing a service that's going to be provided by such, a thing called an officer. But as Morris suggested, something called a networker or something along those lines, that sounds very welcoming and something to look forward to, because networker sounds like someone that's bringing things together rather than someone who is in charge of something. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, that word officer has a power thing attached to it, doesn't it? That immediately puts you off, puts you back up, puts you on the back foot. Networking is much more. I am, however, disappointed to see how many times the word network has been used by people who do not network. The the, the times that that word has been taken as a title for a group's progress, but getting that group to actually make use of their so-called network, really not something you can access. We do need networking,
Yeah.
but genuinely.
Well, yeah. So I suppose my idea is tied to the coal face of the person's actual work, so it doesn't become an easy basic word, but it's actually what the person the client making use of this can see as real. So there's a more remote title, so I've seen that too.
Yeah, I really, really support you in reiterating that, Morris.
The next post is from Autistic and Teaching, who's a blogger. And the description is, I'm a teacher and I have a master's in education and an autistic advocate. And what they're talking about is, I'll just read it out. It's about a stereotype. They say, the supporting text, I'll read it out first. What they say is, there's a misconception that autism means a life of solitude. Movies, and sometimes even medical professionals, paint a picture of autistic individuals as isolated, unable to form lasting bonds. This simply isn't true. Autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is exactly that, a spectrum. It affects people I'll say that again. It affects people in a wide variety of ways. While social interactions can be challenging for some autistic people, many have fulfilling relationships, families, and friendships. They may even choose careers that suit their strengths, like engineering, science, or the arts, and find deep connections there. And for those who prefer solitude, that is perfectly valid too. Happiness doesn't have a one size fits all definition. The problem with perpetuating stereotypes is it hurts the autistic community. Imagine a young autistic person being told they'll never have friends or a family. It's incredibly discouraging and simply untrue. Educators and professionals who deal with autism have a responsibility to represent the reality of the spectrum. When they spread misinformation, it can lead to isolation, anxiety, and a feeling of hopelessness for autistic adults. Let's celebrate the full spectrum of autistic experiences. So let's show autistic adults that they can have fulfilling lives, however they define them. And let's remember, happiness isn't a destination, it's a journey. And autistic people are welcome on that journey, with or without a partner, children, or a big social circle.
I'm very much. I hope you don't mind me just jumping in there because I feel very supportive of that post. Um, I see every time that you put a positive foot forward or a positive face to the world and associate it with your autistic identity, you are doing something that is a piece of self advocacy that is beneficial for yourself, but also a piece of general advocacy that moves against the stereotypes. If people come across the stereotypes but are challenged by your being not the stereotype that they expected, it can be powerful. It can be really powerful as a positive pushback, an unmasked but positive version of autism that you ever managed for however short a period of time and in whatever circumstance is something that's worth adding to your life, just for your own experience, but for your general community's experience.
Yes, it was quite powerful, that post. And you're right, it's the in a personal point of view, I mean, even if I may come across as some kind of stereotype, because I'll be a stereotype of something. I mean, I've done the stereotypical Scotsman before when I did a kind of blog on that some time ago. But it's to inspire people that may feel a wee bit anxious or feeling a bit lost or whatever, and putting that positive spin on it in terms of, things aren't as bleak as some people may have told you or how you've been made to feel. Because sometimes, like, parents can be very protective, which you want, but they can be overprotective, and there's a fear of letting go sometimes a little bit to let the child, and as the child goes older, to experience things and see how things develop because of the big bad world thing. And many may feel kind of restricted by that. But it's good that you get these stories out there and these bits of information that people are different, and not to feel limited to what you can achieve if you want to achieve something. To live, basically.
I want to bring in what Justin's saying over on Podbeam in text. He's talked about whether the networking and how networking is an exclamation mark for him. And then in response to the last post, it's thumbs up, smiley face, heart beating. It's big emotions to support what we've just heard there. But I think also what both of us are saying in agreement with it. I think that's where he's going with that. And in response to this idea of networking that Maros was saying earlier, I said that the autism professionals don't seem to want to network us together. They seem to actually conspire against networking us together. And he's put that they generally don't. They generally don't allow or encourage networking. They work against it.
The next post is from Spectrum Gaming, who are a charity organisation and describes themselves as we are a charity for autistic young people to develop connection, self-acceptance and support. And they're promoting a free webinar called Burnout and Burnout Recovery. And it's all about the one coming up on Tuesday, 2nd of July, this Tuesday coming, 11 to 1. I'm not sure where it is, maybe UK time. They're saying it's our third Barriers to Education webinar is on Tuesday, all about long-term school attendance difficulties, burnout and burnout recovery. We have an incredible team of people working together, and as a result, we have a lot to share, including a new burnout recovery model that has been collaboratively developed. And there's a booking link, and the session is being delivered by the trauma-informed social worker, the Cam Within, Nancy Ott from Autistic Village, and Andy, founder of Spectrum Gaming. The webinar will be recorded. Please book a ticket to be sent the recording. So, in the picture itself, The kind of diagram picture, it's quite nice and colourful. It's saying about, rest and recuperation, the reconnection and building trust, recognition and acceptance of burnout, the adjustment of expectations, and exploring from learning, or exploration. So again, exploration and learning from what happened. So it looks very interesting. And I know that it's just topics that will come up time and time again regarding especially the school environment.
The models are for trying, not for certainty they're going to work. Just hope it's speaking without having seen it, that it's even-handed on where the burnout came from. It's going to be about telling the kids to keep taking the same thing.
Yeah, it's... There you go, Julian.
I think this is the sort of thing we should share with Heather Bowman, the officer thinking about the bedroom boy idea, the people that have decided to opt out of education and just keep at home, probably gaming like this. And the fact that this is from the gaming community, it seems to me that it's, peer-to-peer, it could be a really positive kind of model.
Yeah, it's just a way forward. It's good, these things, these webinars, people getting together, people with a possible new approach, or maybe an approach that hasn't been taken as serious as it should before. People talking, people speaking, people sharing for, for want of a more positive kind of way moving forward. Because the kind of bedroom boys thing, I can believe it could have easily have happened to me. It didn't, but it could have done because of the way that the school environment was for me. And thinking back on it, the only reason that I attended was for the sake of routine and feeling if I didn't go, it'd be, doing something really wrong. I mean, I had friends and things like that, and things were okay sometimes, but many times you feel so alone, and the pressure of certainly secondary schools, and then it's just, and that it can make you anxious, it can make you burn out, and it can make you certainly think too much because they're telling you in school. When I was there, like the decisions you make while you're in this school, the subjects you pick, and you get options to pick certain subjects to learn on, and then have an exam, and then you must pass it. This is going to affect the rest of your life. The way that your life's going to go. And since I've left school, and even my mum and dad even said at the time, it's all nonsense. Don't worry about that sort of thing. You learn a lot more after you leave school, life experiences and all that itself. It's good that these sort of things, have that discussion on the table.
There's somebody in the links there called the trauma-informed social worker, and this trauma-informed is something that I'm seeing more and more in discussions about how we should be looking at people, and how we should be very aware that many people have had some kind of difficulty of the past, that even that they may not be aware of themselves, that is manifesting in their current lives. It looks a little bit behaviourist in its thought process, but it's coming from an opposite place, so it's an interesting way to think about things.
The next post is from Rosie Weldon's Autistic Life, which is a personal blog and described as, I'm an autistic adult that shares my life openly and honestly online. And what they've shared is, there is no such thing as a lost cause. I never in a million years thought I'd be managing a team. I was told I'd never find a job because I couldn't talk to people. There is no such thing as a lost cause. Sure as hell for not being autistic.
Well, I think Justin's the first person who's going to comment on this, because it's merged over from the previous post as well. He's put in quotes, the decisions you make right now will affect the rest of your life, in quotes, full stop. That was bollocks, exclamation mark, he says. Baloney. And then he's made a joke about it being Sandra Bollocks, as in Sandra Bullock, the artist. So yeah, this whole concept that if you don't do something, you'll never have another chance. You should just walk away from anybody with that kind of negative thinking, because there's every single day, every single hour, there's a different opportunity to look at a slightly different set of circumstances, make a different decision and work with it. That crap about any point in your life will make every other point change is irrelevant, and it's not a positive way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely right. I just really get frustrated. You know, obviously the older I get, the more life has went on and the more experience I've had and the achievements that I've made in many ways makes me want to reiterate that point, is don't let anybody kind of hold you back or be negative, or basically saying if you do not take this opportunity, your life is knackered. Your life is going to be full of regret afterward. I mean, that is a terrible thing to say to anyone. Never mind someone with autism who I know through my own experience would think about that being said to me for probably the rest of my life, because you feel that, oh, I had an opportunity to do something and I didn't do it, and then it's all self-blame because you didn't take that opportunity, and it's so damaging. It damages so many people. So you're absolutely right. There's don't let anybody limit you. There's always opportunities out there if you're looking for them, because life is, for as cruel as life can also be very positive and very inspiring, and it's always moving forward. The next post is from Swan Autism Scotland. Swan Autism Scotland is an autistic-led charity run by and for autistic women and non-binary people since 2012. And what they've shared is they're promoting a group that's for people aged between 16 and 35 and living in or near Glasgow. And it says, join us for a creative morning of visible mending. and discussion about your experiences and priorities to inform future research which centres the needs of neurodivergent young women. And it's at the Glasgow Women's Library on Tuesday the 16th of July at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And there's a link to the website which provides more information and for anyone who has any questions.
It seems they must have a seat at some table to get heard by research planners. Some future research can be informed. Be nice to know a bit more as to how they made the connection.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Morris. The thing about research, especially in terms of autism, and in terms of areas that have been not researched enough, I would, in my opinion, in terms of in women, non-males, it's good that it's out there, but it's not been done enough. And the thing about research is what I was going to say is there's been examples of research in the past that it really irks autistic people because of its language, its assumptions, and sometimes totally inaccurate information or out of date information, which can be damaging for many people. So it's good that groups like these and organisations like these are working together with research, because I would imagine that sort of type of researcher would be more positive minded and the seat at the table kind of model that we always talk about. Autistic people are part of that because at the end of the day, they're the ones that can provide the best information and work together for the research to be worthwhile even doing.
I think what Swan is doing is really taking the bull by the horns. They're leading there, aren't they? It's really important that they're doing that. All credit to them.
Yeah, I like a lot of the stuff. I like sharing a lot of the stuff as well on the Facebook. It always seems to be forward thinking. It always seems to be a few steps ahead than other organisations, which is great, and that's what we need, certainly, for other organisations to take up on. Maybe some have been inspired to do so already.
Something that Justin's putting on in response is your life is not knackered. You can always turn your life around. You can always make it better. Thumbs up, smiley face. And then he's associating research and development and then ride a white swan by T-Rex to go in the background for the swans.
Fair enough, that's great, Justin. Thanks for that. The next post is from I've Been Autistic All Along. And it's a blogger. Name's Cara Lee, 41, UK late diagnosed autistic and ADHD peer support. It's a public page, not a group. And what they're saying, they've shared a quote, but I'll read the post first. And it says, it's really hard to stand up for yourself when you've been a people chaser all your life in a bid for safety. Sorry, I'll say that again. It's really hard to stand up for yourself when you've been a people pleaser all your life in a bid for safety. The thing is, though, if you lose people by standing up for yourself, that's a positive loss. They didn't respect you. And the quote says, it's from Thinking Minds. If standing up for yourself burns a bridge, I have matches, we ride at dawn.
The thought has to be part of the mix, has to be part of strength and defenses. You can't make the whole picture on its own. I mean, these things make impacts, and if you find yourself getting an unfair quantity of those situations, or you find folks who should logically take your side in a situation, instead take the wrongest side, those things do wear down the emotions naturally, and the effectiveness of the previous post thoughts, the ease or hardness of opportunities to set up new things. Matters, and it's going to vary, and it's going to be part of the picture that your efforts towards. There's not a thought to just paste over the whole of that type of event casually, and the thing that masks the effects that wrongs can have, and it's just only that you don't keep laying yourself open to them. Fair enough, that means by not being a people pleaser, so you don't get drawn into taking advantage of situations. So that side of it's right. But see, it's got to take all the facets are there. You got to always acknowledge that all the facets are there. Sometimes colliding.
I think sometimes the language here sends us into a way of thinking about it that's about knights in armour and combat and bridges and crossing moats and castles and being in different oppositions. And I think that's generally unfortunate as a metaphor. I would prefer to think of it as directing one's time and attention, spending less time on some relationships because you realise that the shape of them is a kind of people-pleasing kind of place, or something that doesn't support every aspect of what you need in a relationship, but it's useful for some aspects, and you pick and choose a bit of it. And other relationships are just diverting your time from the things that don't fit you so well and more onto other opportunities, rather than this metaphor about burning bridges in one direction, chopping all the chains, and then forging some kind of jump to another vessel in another direction.
The next post is from Grove Neurodivergent Mentoring and Education. And their education website page and is autistic stroke ADHD led and fully neuro-affirming. And what they're sharing is a service. And what they say, it's called Connection and Community for Autistic Young People. Do you have the experience, the passion, and the skills to plan and facilitate fun and supportive group sessions? Not lessons. I'll say that again. Connection and community for autistic young people. Do you have the experience, the passion, and the skills to plan and facilitate fun and supportive group sessions? Not lessons, not tutoring, certainly not social skills training. Instead, connection, community, and a whole heap of joy. Could you make that happen? Would you find joy in that too? If so, you'd be a great lead group mentor. We also need group support mentors who don't need to plan anything but help with facilitation of the sessions. A link to our recruitment information is in the comments. We want to have a broad range of groups available, some that gather weekly and continue long term, giving those young people a sense of belonging and consistency, and some that run for shorter periods of time. Online, 7 days a week, daytime and evening, UK based for now. Maybe you'd like to tell us what sort of group your young person would like. And the picture it's showing is a kind of thing that's kind of showing that everyone's welcome. And it says it centers a laptop with 6 cartoon young people on the screen. Surrounding are images of pencils, Lego books, gaming controller, animals, musical notes, craft, drama masks, sports planet, LGBTQI+, the world, a person writing, and rainbow affinity symbol. So it's basically a promotion for job vacancies or voluntary vacancies for a service. The next post is from Neurodivergent Blue, and it's a blogger finding a place in the neurotypical world. And what they've shared is an interesting one, certainly for me, called Predicting Film Plots and 4 Other Examples of Autistic Pattern Seeking. Often there's a lot of discussion around autistic people's tendencies to seek and recognise patterns. This post unpacks real-life examples of what this can actually look like, beyond just a criteria. Perhaps it could be useful for autism diagnosis assessments too. Recognising patterns in other people's behaviour and using it to decode social situations. When I go out for a meal with a friend, she orders chicken nuggets when she's content, but when she's feeling low on herself, she orders salad. Pattern recognition helps to understand how other people are feeling. Being able to predict what happened in films or TV shows based on noticing patterns from previous programs, being able to notice patterns in music melodies and predicting how the rest of the song will go from this. And hyper-focusing on certain patterns, e.g. noticing car number plate patterns. Enjoying spending time talking or thinking about these patterns. Sometimes it can be difficult, however, to switch off from seeking patterns, and as much as we may like it, it may get overwhelming. We feel distressed if information doesn't fit the pattern. And there's other kind of slides on this as well, but I've read quite a few here, so let's open up for discussion. What do you think about this post?
Can they distinguish patterns from stereotypes? Do stereotypes begin from recognizing patterns and extending them further than they really go? And do fans of TV and films get to know what sort of things happen in plot unfoldings? Is that necessarily autistic? Is it something you can learn in studying film? And perhaps likewise, constructing music, I think, is more outside the casual listeners. Seeing through into the structure, but it's certainly someone who studied it and gone into music as a hobby. If this is autistic, then it's an extra thing that's there rather than something that defines us. So I'm slightly skeptical of using it diagnostically.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know why, but when I read it at first, it seemed it was going to something else. It's actually a lot more detailed and more kind of forensic and detailed to what I realised. Although it's interesting, it's patterns, I suppose. But as you say, I mean, it shouldn't be a diagnostic thing. There is another post that they put up that I'd like to share since we're continuing on with the discussion, and it's a strange one. It's a bit, it's one of the things. It's one of the slides along, and it says, "Feeling like we can predict what will happen in the future. Sometimes our pattern seeking can make it seem like we're able to predict what that will happen in the future. For example, we were able to remember and
So
analyze."
you're breaking up there, Harry.
Sorry. How's my sound now? 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're back in the recording.
Okay, that's fine. Following on the discussion of the topic of the post, there's another slide that kind of relating to the pattern seeking, and it's saying, feeling like we can predict what will happen in the future. Sometimes our pattern seeking can make it seem like we're able to predict what will happen in the future, and it does say predict, and it's highlighted and it's quoted. For example, we are able to remember and analyze the patterns and what that has happened in the past, and then use that to predict what will happen in the future. Now, to be honest, I have no idea what this is actually meaning. Does this relate to anybody?
Well, the ebb and flow of military, if it's in war, then how various balances of strength and approaches work or not, which perhaps probably a lot of study of, rather than being autistic, it's just a studied subject. Could say politics as well, and the estimated flow or reaction of polls. Like the way the independence polls here followed the same pattern as Quebec.
I think the thought is that because our predilection towards pattern matching, it's a kind of inbuilt skill that some people who identify as autistic have. It means that we can be expecting ourselves to predict the future based on what has happened before, and that has two possibilities to it. It can accurately warn us that we are entering a situation or a relationship or something that has red flags, that it can be a self-guarding thing, it can be a protective mechanism of avoiding and learning from our experience, but it can also overly control our responses so that we always make the same decisions based on the same information. And we need a balance in our lives that gives us the opportunity to alter the way we react, see what difference that creates, and experiment with that. That's the human condition, trying yourself out against the rest of the world. So it can work both ways.
The next post is from Autistic Revolution, which is a magazine, an online magazine developed by autistic people. We are a community-based organisation connecting folk through art, photography and written word. Our love language is neurodivergent affirming. And it's the editor, Jenny Laughlin, the editor of Autistic Revolution. And it's describing themselves. And what they're saying is, I am white, British, bisexual, speaking autistic person. I recognise my privilege. Autistic Revolution doesn't represent all autistic folk, and despite documentation, we are individually different from one another and will have preferences based on our lived experience. Our ethos is to raise autistic voices and lived experience, showcase skills, talent and creativity. Our digital publication is a chilled, welcoming vibe. We certainly don't police tone and language. We provide folks with alternative choice of language while providing a magazine hopefully folks enjoy to read. Art, photography, illustrations, poems, articles, videos. It's always good to have respectful, kind discussions. Language, principles, beliefs evolve as we learn. Language affects our principles and beliefs. Other principles and beliefs then go on to impact how a person might feel about themselves, well-being, mental health. After saying self-accuracy is so important when you're autistic or otherwise neurodivergent. If you don't understand your central nervous system, brain, and body, then how can you tell people what you need from them to support regulation and deregulation? I'm overwhelmed because I don't feel safe, because I'm dysregulated, because even the above can be so difficult to say if you don't feel safe to say it. I stand in solidarity with our non-speaking autistic folk too. It's quite lengthy, this. But I'll continue to read if you're okay with that.
Well, it's a good comprehensive picture she's making. If we
Yeah.
refer back to.
Basically, the quote at the start says in the picture, "It's far better to love and know yourself. You shouldn't have to change for the benefit of others." And going back to the post itself, they say the autistic children who are described as having communication problems, interaction problems, socialization problems, behavior difficulties, disruptive, and many more deficit-based language. Could it be that the problems arise due to not being able to interact or connect according to our preference? Every human on the planet is different to one another. Neurodiversity is the whole of humanity, all variant brain types, and that there is no such thing as normal, scientifically or biologically. Normal is a word that is used to streamline and marginalise, but a normal brain doesn't exist. The DSM-5 is a diagnosis criteria which unfortunately is still used to diagnose autism. It sets out how one should behave and function in order to be considered normal. Every school report, EHCP, EIP, and report ever written about a child, including reports from the NHS, follows that criteria and guideline. When you unpick that, it really does highlight how trained we are in society to think, conform, act, react, and believe. As soon as we are born, we are being tracked and measured, normal, abnormal. The DSM-5 doesn't recognise or validate any other neurotype other than normal. This is because of research undertaken over 100 years ago by Asperger's, who was a Nazi, on white British boys only. Wouldn't it be wonderful if humanity was allowed to be how it was made to be, all uniquely different to one another? Wouldn't it be wonderful if different neurotypes didn't need a diagnosis and labelled disordered or having a condition? Wouldn't it be wonderful if autistic children didn't view their neurodivergence through the lens of others who don't know any better because they've also been brainwashed? As an autistic person myself, I have so much deep embedded trauma from not being able to be myself. A lot of people have viewed my neurodivergence as something to be trained, cured, or fixed according to the DSM-5. I would say, shouldn't we all be enabled to be ourselves, neurotypicals and neurodivergents, and learn from one another? No one neurotype more important or special than the other. To love and respect one another, equal. The above is sent with warmth and solidarity. Quite lengthy, but totally get it and I totally agree with it. What's other thoughts?
So she's been through it, through the traumas. Comes from a knowing place. Humanity. So It's got a pack animal history. It's never treated as its own with care to be themselves. It's the same pain every different group. It's good when we write about, which I actually did on the first line at the top, about the several combined identities, which will have had the same kind of hammering historically, whether or not they're the same person. I'm just feeling the weight of this.
It's the word normal. So I say that again, Morris, I talked over you.
I just thought of the latest edition, as folks should.
It's the word normal. It's that thing that doesn't exist, but people and society is measured up against. This perfect, normal person. So that everybody's some sort of spectrum that isn't quite at it, but you're measured, in comparison to it to see what you could be labelled with, what we can be diagnosed with. And that is right. It's very narrow-minded, and it's got to have more scope. But when it comes to things like medical kind of functioning, they feel they need to, to narrow it down to make it more simpler to get to offer a system to work. But that's no good for individuals. And it's certainly not good for a lot of individuals who feel they've been put down. I mean, the kind of words that I've kind of grown up with, if someone isn't perceived as normal, as somebody isn't right, or there isn't right, they're no right, meaning they're not right in the head. And there's just this sort of us normal thing. It just drives me crazy how everything seems to be compared to that thing that doesn't even exist. The next post is from Autism Support Community, who's a blogger. Described as late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, 2 sons, writer, blogger, public talks, autism, mental health, bullying. And what they're talking about is a repost, they say, and it's about stop apologising and start thanking in terms of the language. Like, for instance, going through the picture, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I'm always late, say, thank you for waiting for me. I'm sorry for being so emotional. Maybe you could say, thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry I always mess up. You could say, thank you for being patient when I make a mistake. When you say, I'm sorry for talking so much, you could also say, thank you for listening to me. And when you say, I'm sorry for being so needy, you can say, instead, thank you for being supportive. If you say, I'm sorry I can't come tonight, you could say instead, thank you for the invitation. And lastly, I'm sorry to ask for another favour. You could say instead, thank you for helping me out. So it's basically saying stop apologising and thank instead, which is more positive kind of way of saying, like positive. I mean, what the post says itself is he says that I'm always saying sorry, even for things that are not my fault. This is a gentle reminder on how to stop saying sorry unnecessarily. And I do that myself. I've even apologised live on this. It's like I say sorry, then explain that I've done something, even though I haven't really done anything wrong. It's just me basically explaining why I did something. And I'm in my head thinking that it's actually a wrong thing to do. What's your thoughts on this?
It's one of those culture tropes, isn't it? We have a bit of a social system of preemptive sorries for accidental situations, but there's people pleasing that creeps into actual choice in doing things situations. That's only a good tip. I actually think that saying sorry that much would make me feel like imposing on myself on the person and make me feel more sort of social fear, and that's probably why I don't do it. But everyone's there's a difference in the habits they form from. We can see where it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one that I've kind of done the most is if I run late, it's like a big apology for saying sorry. I'm sorry, I'm late. Just checking something, Julian. Are you okay? Are you able to hear us? Because I've seen that you were in and out a little bit. If you've got sort of technical problems on your end.
Oh dear. Yeah, I can't hear either.
No. We'll just continue. And Julian will come in when he can.
Sorry, my end of the recording crashed here. I had to go out and come in.
Right. How's things now?
Everything's working fine.
Okay. The next post is from Emergent Divergence, the neurodivergent ramblings of David Gray Hammond. And what he says is when it comes to autistic people and the experience of pain, there is a lot to be said. Many of us anecdotally report having a mixed profile of hypo and hypersensitivity to different kinds of pain. Unfortunately, the experience of pain is not one well understood by medical professionals. This results in autistic people often not receiving adequate care for their pain management needs. And it's a link to David's kind of article on this particular subject. I've touched on it before, and it was actually from David Gray Hammond. So, any thoughts on this about the pain thing?
Well, it's interesting that we made a podcast recently about this, didn't we? We discussed it as a group. So it's obviously something that other people are aware of. It matters. Being believed matters. And sharing that kind of experience is healthy for us all to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's been said before in different posts and things that we've discussed, is that if someone is in pain, but not showing they're in pain in terms of expressing that they're in pain, it can be misidentified as something that may be minor, and it could be serious. And there's even been examples of people actually losing their lives because of that misunderstanding in terms of the medical need that's needed at that particular time, and the signs, the signals that the person, the autistic person who's having that pain is showing, is like if they're not screaming their head off, or if they're very content, or they're managing a pain, or it's just the way that they're expressing it. It doesn't look as, it may not look as serious as it actually is, and that is very worrying when you think about it.
And are they aware of needing? Are they aware it's not coming across? Because it's apparent to themselves. So, posts like this to put us in mind of such concerns and remind us that it's one of our sensory variations. I can recognize the variation profile. I think I'm more sensitive to like solid impact pain as a kid that made me unfashionably not macho about it. Seems a bit of a insulting words about developments about it. But I've been noticed several times to seem to have a low pain threshold towards, not sorry, lowest when it's you feel it more. High pain threshold, low feeling, yeah. Towards hot water and hot drinks, washing up water.
Justin adds to this, being believed does matter, exclamation mark, and underlining with an exclamation mark, misunderstanding and believing people when they're telling the truth. So I think we can read from what Justin's saying. He feels that sometimes it's difficult for us to get across accurate information and be received accurately. And I take what Morris says about those from our era. If you were in any way held as not meeting a certain imposed male standard at the time, you would be insulted with words like retard, a word that some people find triggering right now, or other versions of it, because you would have a local version of some kind of insult that would make somebody less because they were in some way deemed as the village idiot of some kind. All cultures have this, whatever the word is, and they're usually many words. It's a concept of human society that goes down the ages. And I notice out of the right hand screen, if I notice what Justin's writing, he's writing retard and he's writing retarded in exclamation mark. So, we can see that this is a word that has power with people.
I was thinking of more like baby and not grown up, and so seen as that they're supposed to develop into being so a strong shield on your exterior.
Yeah, spinning it like that to deflect is, that's a psychological trick. That's something you learnt to do. Maybe that's harmed how you feel about things. You don't, the things that we did to adapt to keep out of the eye of the bully. have consequences for the rest of our lives. For some people, that might be developing a talent to have a quick wit to be able to deal with it all, or another person fighting, or another person trauma. You know, it really doesn't. Everyone's experience of this kind of stuff has similarities and dissimilarities.
The next post is from Neurodiversity Manitoba, who are a mental health service and neurodiversity affirming lived experience supports for schools, adults, families, teens, and children, based in Canada. And it says why ADHD and autism can look like trauma. They are more connected and similar than you might think. Near the end of 2021, I wrote an article outlining many of the ways in which we understand ADHD to be primarily caused by genetics. My writing was sparked by Gabor Mate's insistence that ADHD is caused by trauma. It is not. There is no evidence of a causal link, but there is a correlation. Dr. Mate is a well-respected expert in understanding the impacts of trauma, but not an expert in ADHD. Regardless, I am certain that Dr. Mate took Psychology 101 and knows full well correlation does not equal causation. Having outlined evidence of a strong genetic component in the development of ADHD and an estimated heritability rate between 75 and 8%, I know why someone might conflate ADHD, autism, and trauma. My article explains why there are so similarities and how one can look like the other. What's your thoughts?
Well, when they go together in that course of events so often, it's to have some convergence and reactions to things. It's hard to draw a line clearly. It's that as long as you're aware there are both conditions there, it could be a bit like the distinction of ADHD and autistic, which it's hard to draw a line, even though there's two different things, but like the two different nearby cities grow into each other.
My gut feeling that goes around this is that one of the reasons so many non-male autistic people were not being recognised were that they were being misdiagnosed with trauma, and that somebody needs to look at it from this angle and think about it from this angle to help the non-male autistic community, because I have the feeling and a little bit of information from people's testimony that I've read that being diagnosed with some label that's attached to something to do with psychological trauma is a very common experience for non-males, and that several of those testimonies have only really resolved their identity and their feeling about how they need to be supported in the world once they understand neurodiversity and autism. So to me there does seem to be something very important in looking at these two things together and differentiating the two things for a wide group of people in different societies.
On the post itself, the similarities, it says with autism, the similarities with ADHD, trauma, PTSD, Like autism, it says hypersensitivity to sensory input, often has comorbid sleep and anxiety issues, and struggles socially due to markedly different communication styles. I mean, it has been discussed before about how a lot of things can be, there's similarities, and as what Julian says, about some things being misdiagnosed as trauma as well, particularly for non-males. It just shows you, when things are learned, when things do improve, someone needs to experience that they need to experience the mistake before things are kind of rectified in the end. And a lot of people have been misdiagnosed with different things all through the years, particularly people with autism, and the damage that does, for people is quite worrying, even though they do eventually get to the right place in the end. But it just shows you that's how things are learned. They're learned from mistakes, but it's a horrible thing if the mistake has been done on you, and the treatment or the experience or your sense of being is actually being misidentified, and you're actually living that and then having to get that all sorted, which would take many years to resolve.
The toughness that some people have had to live under a kind of misdiagnosis is something that often shocks me when I come across it. That disassociation, that being misdiagnosed or mislabeled, misthought about, and how that must play with your own sense of self, is really kind of a hard one to fathom for me. But it feels intense. It feels like it's an intense thing to happen to somebody. What I would like to say, though, is that even in the last couple of years, the resources that are out there that have been produced as alternatives to the old stuff, there really are good resources out there now, where it was a dearth of stuff. So many things are looking up when it comes to helping people with their diagnoses around autism. So many things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Julian, on that. A lot of things that have been shared, a lot of things that have been talked about in a lot of ways is the alternative. And it's basically because people have had such a hard time, and it's basically, it brings people up a little bit, at least, that these alternatives, these conversations are happening, because the old way is, as well as some of the things it has done, the old ways is the old way, and it's very obviously old fashioned sort of kind of mindset. But it's good that there's always ways forward, that there's alternatives out there and more progressive stuff. Like as we said earlier, that the broadcast is like, in a previous post, is like autism was once kind of put down as something that's very limiting and a big negative, and it's like you can't do this and you can't do that. But now the people have turned around and said you can't say that as a definite, because everybody is different. Some people may be able to do things than others can. I mean, there's many things that I can do that maybe others in even round a ritual table couldn't do, and it's the same the other way around. It's just that what I like is the positive mindset that's out there. That people are saying to you, don't feel bad for being you, because a lot of people feel that way because they feel disordered, they feel worthless, they feel useless because they've been made to feel that way because of the society they live in. And some people have more traumatic experiences than others, but it's that sense of worth that people are trying to promote now, is like, believe in yourself, don't let anybody put you down. And I like all that, and I'm glad that a lot of that is out there and being promoted. And despite obviously the bite back that a lot of these people will get as being, it's raising false hopes and all that, which I don't believe it does. I mean, the best thing you can do, or one of the greatest things you can do, is help someone believe in themselves. I mean, people have done it for me, and I really appreciate that has been done, and I appreciate hearing that being, not being done to others, but it's other people have felt the benefits from it themselves, rather than being told there's something wrong with you and your life is limited, and that's it. Because in this sort of thing, it's about your life, and it's something to be cured, which is not.
There's a lot of positive reaction from Justin to what you're saying there, Harry. Thumbs up, big smiley face. Positive mindset, exclamation mark. And then another post, self-worth, reiterating what you're saying.
Possibilities are never false. Keeping all possibilities in the picture. Well, let's do that with many crises and problems.
Absolutely right. Thanks, Morris. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Julian. So this is us coming to the end of the podcast. Well, the broadcast and podcast. So thanks, everybody. We're going to finish that again on a nice positive note. And that's something we always try to do after the long discussions that we have for the period of time that we do it. Thanks to everybody that shared the Facebook posts for what we discussed tonight, and also we shared, throughout the week and throughout the many kind of years now that we've done this. It's always very helpful and beneficial, and very educating as well, and inspiring. So this is Spectrum Voices Conversation, here every Sunday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So thank you once again for joining us, and I look forward to next time. Good night.
Good night, and I think that's good night from Justin too.